Welcome back, everyone, to the Wargiven Racing Podcast, episode number 23, discussing the first round of the 2022 Formula One season at the Bahrain Grand Prix, obviously in Bahrain. Um, you know, it was a great start to the this new era of Formula One. New period, new cars. Cars look great aerodynamically or visually. I guess I can't see, you can't see aerodynamics, but the on track product was good, and we'll obviously go a bit more into detail as we move through this racing recap podcast. So, taking a look at the track background and information, as I was unable to get a weekend preview up for the Bahrain Grand Prix. I apologize for that. Some school stuff got in the way. But anywho, just some quick track background. This was the 18th Bahrain Grand Prix at the circuit, and then with the exception of the 2010 edition, every other race has used the 15-turn Grand Prix course. This was the fourth time the circuit had been used as the season opener, with 2006, 2010 last year, and this year being the four occasions. There are three DRS zones, one on the pit straight, one on the straight between turn 3 and 4, and then the straight between turn 10 and 11. Like I mentioned, this was the first race with the new aerodynamic regulations, and the defending race winner is Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes F1 team. Now, taking a look at our points finishers for today, Charles Leclerc for Ferrari wins his first race since Monza in 2019, Ferrari's first race since Singapore of 2019, and I don't want to say dominated because that is unfair to Max Verstappen, but he was always a step ahead of Verstappen, whether it be through pace, the car, how he attacked corners. He just was one step ahead, and he qualified on pole and converted from it. So obviously a 10 out of 10 race for him. He was followed by his teammate Carlos Sainz, who was running third for the most of the day, I think it was about 10 to 12 seconds off of Verstappen, so about 15, 16 seconds off his teammate. So obviously not where he wants to be because, as you saw last year, Carlos Sainz likes to compete with Charles, and he beat Charles in the standings last year. So, a good day. I believe he qualified third. Yeah, he qualified third. And, to move up a position, to have a solid race, no incidents, a solid 8.5 out of 10 day for him. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are next. And this is really a great job by Mercedes, putting in that consistent damage control mode when they are not the fastest car. Obviously, they typically have been the fastest car, so by that standards, this is a disappointing day for them. But at the same time, they knew they weren't going to be the fastest, and they actually weren't for once, and they didn't pull off the correct strategy to get them in that battle for the lead, or even for the podium up until the end of the race. But we'll get into that. Kevin Magnussen in his return. Wow. I will be the first to hold my hands up and say I did not think the Haas would have race pace. I thought the Haas was going to be better, obviously, but maybe only in qualifying, maybe scraping into the top 10, not qualifying where it did, and not staying where it did in the race. Obviously, benefited from the late race shenanigans, but, a point stay was never out of the question for Magnussen unless something drastically wrong happened, and it didn't. So, good job for him on his return to F1, scoring more points today than Haas has in the past 2 seasons. So, you got to hold your hands up and congratulate the engineers and the team of Haas for, building a better car. And, the write-off of 2021 looks to have worked so far. And then moving on to 6th place, another car I thought was not going to be here in terms of 6th place, Valtteri Bottas and his Alfa Romeo debut. 6th place, comfortably into Q3. Great day for them. Again, if you had listened to the season preview podcast, I predicted Haas 10th and Alpha 9th. So unless they have a drastic fall off, that's already looking very wrong. But again, good day for Bottas. Like Magnussen, I'd give them 10 out of 10s. They did nothing wrong. Well, no, I'll take that back. I'll give them 9 out of 10s because the start for Bottas was a bit rough. Well, no, Magnussen, I'll give it 10 out of 10. Bottas had a bad start, but, fought his way through, which is nice to see, as his racecraft is typically very heavily maligned by many F1 fans. Then we move on to Esteban Ocon for Alpine. Had a good day. Was always in that top 10 battle. I can't remember if he got into Q3, but he qualified close to Q3 if he didn't get in. To me, I think the Alpine's the 4th fastest car on pure pace. Just because we saw that the Alfa Romeo did drop back and the Haas did drop back a bit. And I don't think the Haas or the Alfa will be as strong on other circuits. Obviously, that remains to be seen. But for right now, I think the Alpine is 4th best. And he overcome the 5-second penalty that he got from tagging Mick Schumacher on the first lap. Obviously, the safety car kind of closed it back up, and the bottom half of the points finishers here were fortunate about what happened. But, still, he put the car there, and he got the points. So good for him. Same with Yuki Tsunoda, was battling with the Alpines and Zhou Guanyu and Mick Schumacher. And, worked his way into the points to pick up where his teammate was before his teammate's engine, or not even his engine, his battery, I believe, went pop. So, good day for him. Fernando Alonso kind of was just, I don't think Alpine got their pit strategy right. They pit Alonso a bit too early. I think both the first and the second time, and while he got a good initial gap, he was just not able to defend. But then again, finished in the points, obviously fortunate to do so. Would have finished 11th without the Red Bulls deciding to not have fuel pressure at the end of the race. But, again, a solid day, 7 out of 10 for him. And then Zhou Guanyu, 10 out of 10. It doesn't matter that he's fortunate to get points. I was critical of him in the season preview. I said he was going to be the only driver to not score points if I had to pick one. And he scored points on his debut, of course. Obviously fortunate to score points, but at the same time, kept it clean, kept it consistent, didn't spin, didn't really make any contact with anybody. And, that's all you could do. And he used the pace of the car to get into that battle. And, props to him, 10 out of 10. Made it into Q2 in qualifying. First ever qualifying session in F1. So, very well done by the rookie. So, moving on to the notable moments. Lap 1, Leclerc got a great start, held off Verstappen. Ocon tagged Schumacher going through the S's in that Sector 1 to Sector 2 transition. Schumacher just, whether accidentally or on purpose, 360'd around, kept going. Probably damaged his car a little bit, but we'll really never know unless they release a point. But report. But Ocon got the first penalty of the year, 5 seconds that he served during his pit stop. Other notable things about the start: Bottas had a bad start. Perez had a bad start. As you can see, lap 10, Perez finally got back into 4th place after dropping to 6th behind Kevin Magnussen and Lewis Hamilton. But the Red Bull was faster, and then with the help of DRS and Hamilton, not being able to keep up with the top 3 at that point, hurt his ability to defend, obviously. And this is where this is why I put him 7th, is he recovers, he's able to recover, and he's consistent. It looked like he might have been able to catch Sainz if the race had kept going as it was. And even with the safety car, I think he probably would have passed Sainz and finished, 2nd? But that poor start hurt him. And it created a gap that he couldn't completely close up to. So if Perez is going to, compete, he's got to get that start. He's got to get the whole race down. Qualifying was much better compared to last year. That was nice to see. But at the same time, struggles. Lap 17 to 19, first round of pit stops had just been complete. Verstappen undercut Leclerc, and they battled for the lead because Verstappen got in DRS range. Leclerc very smartly, almost like he was racing in the F1 game, backed off into turn 1 in the detection zone for the next DRS zone and allowed Verstappen down his inside and then took off. Well, not took off. He passed him back heading into turn 4 after the second DRS zone. So well done there. And then he did it again on lap 19. Verstappen goes steaming through, locks up the brakes. Leclerc gets DRS going down. Verstappen's got to, shake back his car going through 2 and 3. And with the DRS and that, Leclerc opened up a second, and Verstappen was never able to fully get up to, battle with Leclerc. And that continues on to lap 31. Even the undercut again from Red Bull couldn't get close enough to Leclerc to make it work. So again, this is where Leclerc really had that, management of his tires to do a great job. And then the battle for the final points positions. This was, depending on the pit strategy, a constant battle between, how I would honestly say, 8th and 13th. I mean, you had Gasly, Tsunoda, Bottas, my bad, 7th and 13th. Zhou, both Alpines, Mick Schumacher. They were all battling, and they were swapping back and forth, again, depending on when they pit. And so that was really nice to see. I think F1 did a great job, especially in the turn, I think it's 5, 6, 7, 8, I want to say, the S's in Sector 2, and then turn 11 after the final DRS, or the straight, after the straight, did a great job of showing that these cars can follow. Like, at one point, Fernando Alonso took he backed up the corner and took the inside, and he went right up the inside. I think it was Mick Schumacher in turn 11. If you had tried that in last year's cars, the aero wash would have pushed him off the track. So it was fantastic to see that these cars worked so far on this track. It aerodynamically was easier to follow. And you saw passes in places you wouldn't. Last year, that pass would have had to been made going into the braking zone, not after the braking zone. So that was great. And then lap 44. Oh, poor Pierre. Pierre Gasly, who I believe was in 7th at the time, was running quite comfortably. He had kind of escaped from that midfield gap and was just driving along. And then coming in out of turn 3, his battery went pop. So had an electrical fire, and obviously he's okay. Got out of the car pretty quick. The marshals were able to get that fire mostly under control. But that at first caused a VSC, but was upgraded to a safety car. Groups everybody up. We're like, yes, it's time. And there's going to be battle. As much as Charles Leclerc deserved to win, we're like, yes, there's a fight. Verstappen's going to go guns blazing down into turn 1. And, well, he'd been reporting issues. I believe it was with his steering, so that might have been something hydraulic in the wheel, losing his power steering after his third pit stop, which was right before Gasly retired. And it obviously didn't, I don't think, affect what he ended up retiring with, which, as you can see here on lap 53, I think, looking into it after, or reading some articles after the race, it was a fuel pump issue. So maybe not a powertrain issue, but maybe the packaging, maybe cut it off. Maybe they didn't fill it up all the way, left too little. They couldn't pump it into the engine. And his car just died, and he coasted into the pits. It was kind of sad, honestly, just to see, the Red Bull, he got trained down that straight between turn, I want to say 13 and then 14, and it was just kind of sad to see. And then on the final lap, Perez going into the corner. He's going to make a move on Carlos Sainz, but he's defending from Hamilton, and he just loses it. And I'm like, oh. And I was listening to the Talking Points, the Live Fast podcast with the YouTubers Aldas and Hayden Golis. And they're like, oh, Hamilton hit him. And honestly, I thought the same thing. I thought Hamilton tagged another Red Bull. And looking on the camera, obviously that didn't happen, but his engine just stopped, and he couldn't do anything about it. So that's a shame. Obviously, it sucks for Red Bull that they had this issue. I don't think it was their powertrain. I don't think Gasly's was their powertrain. I think it might have been their packaging, their chassis around it, the carbon fiber around the engine maybe did something, or they didn't fill it all the way, in the Verstappen and Perez issue. And so that's going to cost them big, as you're going to see with the point standings. They've got a large gap to make up. And then obviously the final lap, Charles Leclerc leads home. Ferrari's 1-2. Forza Ferrari, they're back. They're actually back this time. And, they did what they needed to do, and they got a maximum points day. So, talking about the different storylines and some stats, there was one safety car for the Gasly incident. There were only 3 different leaders, which shows that it was really a 2-horse race between Leclerc and Verstappen. Verstappen never led a lap, so he doesn't get credited with that, but he took the lead going into turn 1, but lost it twice coming out before turn 4. So I credit him with being a leader. And then Carlos Sainz, during the second round of pit stops, he led a few laps before coming in for his second stop. Pit strategy was definitely different. These new 18-inch Pirelli tires wear a lot faster. Maybe it's because Bahrain's a very hot track. It's very hot in Bahrain, even at night. Maybe that wore down the tires a bit. Maybe just the type of track it was wore it down. I don't care. I'm all for more pit stops. That's just something I like to see. Obviously, I don't like to see the tires falling off, which I don't think they did. I think, they were able to push. But, teams are going to get used to it and whatnot. And everyone pit at least 3 times, but Mick Schumacher. Haas gambled during the safety car period. Maybe they didn't have any tires left that were fresh. But he kind of got up on the restart, on that final restart, which put him 11th, unfortunately. And the hard tire. Ooh. The hard tire, it came good, but you lost a lot of time in that, I would say, 5 to 10 lap period where you had to really work the tire in. And, Hamilton struggled at the beginning of his stint on the hards. Russell struggled at the end of his stint on the hards. So it was not a good race tire here at Bahrain. And, you saw that with McLaren. McLaren started Lando on the mediums and then went to the hards. And it just, their car was already having problems, but it just made it a lot worse. But moving on to the Ferrari, glory. First win and first 1-2 since the 2019 Singapore Grand Prix with their rocket ship illegal engine. So it's nice to see them have a legal win. Redemption for Charles Leclerc, who in 2019 should have won the Bahrain Grand Prix, but had a mechanical issue that forced him to slow up in the closing stages of that race, cost him the win. So it's nice to see him get that win, exercise the demon, get rid of the demon that kind of held over him. So that was obviously nice to see. Excuse me. And then, so the Merc customer teams really struggled. McLaren, Williams, Aston Martin were all at the bottom. And I honestly think it has to do with the suspension. Porpoise has been a major issue for these teams through testing. It seemed like McLaren had figured out a way to fix it, but I think that slowed them down a bit. They had braking issues, which I believe I heard at some point Lando Norris saying they were horrible in the slow speed corners. And that showed, if that's the true reason why they were that bad at Bahrain, with a lot of slow, complex of corners. So not surprising why they struggled. They'd been having problems with their brakes, so that didn't help. Aston Martin, I think during the race when Crofty asked the team principal, why are you guys so slow, more or less, he's like, to solve the porpoising, we had to raise our ride height, and it cost them, according to him, 3/4 of a second a lap. Now, realistically, it was probably maybe half that, but still, that's a ton. You add that up over 57, laps. That's a ton of time. So no surprise to see them in the back if that's the issue. And then Williams. I don't think the Williams is the slowest car on the whole, but I think it's the most aerodynamically sensitive to wind, and I'm pretty sure is pretty windy this weekend just across the board, so that didn't help. Um, but then I don't think the Mercedes suspension has been designed properly with the floor, and I'm no engineer, but to me, that's why they're porpoising so much. I mean, the Mercedes factory team was still porpoising a lot, and it hurt them under braking. You saw it with Lewis Hamilton. So I think just Mercedes at the moment just doesn't have the design philosophy, and then that extends to their customer teams. That helps, and Mercedes has no side pods, no defined side pods. So their engine packaging is a lot different than their customer teams, and maybe that affects the customer teams because it has more drag, right? It's not as aerodynamic. So, and then I talked about Red Bull powertrains already. Shaky debut. Is it their engine? Is it their battery? Is it their fuel, like their packaging that caused the fuel pump problems? Who knows? But, they've taken a big step. And sometimes we've seen when teams try to go that extra step, it does not go well. I don't think it's going to be a problem throughout the season. I think Red Bull's still going to, compete again. If you watch the season preview, Max Verstappen's going to finish third in the championship, in my opinion, and Red Bull's going to finish third. I think this confirms that Verstappen has the pace, and he's going to He's going to win a lot of races this year still. But the car's not going to be there for him to win the championship. The car's not going to be there to win the Constructors. So next year, I think, is when Red Bull will be back competing for both titles fully. And then, obviously, development race begins. We didn't see it last year because it was a carryover car for this regulation, to get to this regulation. Teams going to bring in updates thick and fast from now until December, at least for some teams, to figure out this new car. And I'm pumped. I like listening to the Tech Talk on the F1 YouTube channel about it. So I would monitor that in order to get, the latest in the new tech that they're bringing to the track. I would not be surprised to see teams bringing packages as soon as next week. I would probably say Australia is the safer bet, just because it's a little bit more time. But yeah, the development race is on, and may the best team win. So, looking at the constructors and the drivers' standings, obviously Charles Leclerc leads the way. He got the win. He got the fastest lap, so he's at 26 points. Sainz brought home the max day for Ferrari, was second. And then Hamilton, Russell, Magnussen, Bottas, Ocon, Tsunoda, Alonso, and Zhou Guanyu round out the points so far. Converting that into the teams, you've got Ferrari at 44, Mercedes at 27, and then Haas at 10. Alfa Romeo and Alpine, due to having two cars score, are at 9 and 8, so challenging with Haas. And then AlphaTauri with Tsunoda is a 4. And then the rest of the constructors, which of course Red Bull also has 0 points, is just based off their finishing position. So that to see, I mean, they're all going to score points. If Haas scored points, everyone can score points. I'm a firm believer in that this year. So it's going to be up and down. This is not going to stay still throughout the season. So it'll be interesting to see, the bounce up and down for the midfield. And then something I like to do, just because I'm a weird person, I like seeing the alternate history scenarios. If you watch my NASCAR racing recaps, you see the fast car point system, which is my take on a full season's point format, kind of using the old Winston Cup points format, which ran up until 2003 for NASCAR. And then in IndyCar, I have my kart points format that I have just for some fun. This is not to be taken seriously. This is just for fun. I like seeing how it would play out. So in this, it's just your top 8 score points, and then so the losers out of the big losers of this is actually none of the teams, because they all had people in the top 6. or the top 8. But Fernando Alonso and Zhou Guanyu do not score any points here. So that wraps up this F1 racing recap for the Bahrain Grand Prix. We will be back with the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix next week with both the race preview and the racing recap. I promise the racing preview this weekend will be released. Again, I apologize for that. I ran out of time between school, work, and the 7 different series racing this weekend, this past weekend, which was glorious. Sunday was fantastic. You watched Formula One in the morning, you had IndyCar to start the afternoon, and then you had NASCAR to end the day, and it was glorious. But that does it for me today. If you liked any of the thoughts I had, feel free to hit that like button. If you've got your own thoughts, leave them down in the comment section. If you are new to the channel, feel free to hit that big red subscribe button. And then feel free to check out the other content on the channel using the playlist. Everything is updated. This podcast specifically will be in the F1 playlist and the overall playlist. If you're a glutton for just hearing me talk, this is the 23rd Wargiven Racing podcast. So there's all 22 previous podcasts in that playlist already. I will be coming soon with the IndyCar racing recap, the NASCAR racing recap, and the sports car racing recap of all this week's action. So keep an eye out for those. And then Fast Car hopefully will return some point this week after having a break last week due to all the different in real life racing. And all of the Fast Car races can be found on the channel as well. Again, I appreciate the support that you guys have shown throughout the past few months, and I look forward to the start of a fantastic F1 season. F1 is back. It is nice to see. Despite the American in me, I recognize that F1 is the world's biggest motorsport, and I am thrilled to have it back. So with that being said, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Enjoy the racing. Keep watching.